All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be our next video on environmental science and specifically going over our core content on population growth. Let's get started on this next video. So what is human population growth? Well, human population growth is the increase in the number of humans in the total population globally. And this population has an effect on all of our lives. It has an effect on humans, but also the ecosystems. So if we think about this population growth and how it goes through and grows has an effect on our economy. It also has an effect on the ecosystem and the environment. It's also going to have an effect on humans directly, as there can potentially be competition for resources. And then lastly, we see the effect on other organisms living in the environment that we share with them. Now, for nearly all of human history, only a few million people have lived on the earth at one time. And although these past populations cannot be calculated precisely, we still have some idea how many people existed thousands of years ago. We add about 78 million people to the planet each year, and that's more than 200,000 people a day. And today the rate of population growth is slowing, but our absolute numbers continue to increase and shape our interactions with one another and with our environment. So if we look at human population growth on a graph, what we can do is we can look at the growth over thousands of years, and we can look at the human population in billions. So as we start from 8,000 BC, we can move our way up to modern times as we move along this chain here. And what we see is as soon as we go through and hit about 2000 AD, we see this massive growth in the human population. And we can attribute that to a couple of things. Right around 8000 BC, we see this agricultural revolution, and we see a shift from hunter-gatherers to agricultural development in humans. This little dip here that we actually see is the bubonic plague, and we can see a small dip in the human population there. But what we see is this industrial revolution and the use of mechanized machinery that has allowed the human population to grow over time exponentially. Now, the agricultural revolution, well, this was a transition from hunter-gatherer lifestyles to an agricultural way of life. And we saw people going from hunting and gathering food sources to going through and staying in one area and then growing those food sources so that way they could provide for their families and for their communities. Now, as people began to grow crops and raise domestic animals and live in villages, they found it easier to meet their nutritional needs. And as a result of this, they began to live longer and produce more children who survived into adulthood. Now, after this agricultural revolution here, what we see is the Industrial Revolution in the 1700s. And this was a major shift from rural life and animal-powered agriculture and handmade manufacturing to an urban society powered by non-renewable resources. So what we see in the industrialized agricultural revolution is the use of these fossil fuels going through and powering all of the machinery that we see going through and farming for us today. And fossil fuels, all they are non-renewable energy resources such as coal, oil, and natural gas. And this is the type of fuel that is used to fuel our industrialized agricultural machinery. Now, the Industrial Revolution introduced many improvements. It introduced medical technology and advancements, sanitation improvements, and agricultural products increased with the use of fossil fuel-powered equipment and chemical fertilizers. Humans lived even longer than they did in the agricultural revolution. They had healthier lives, and over time they enjoyed new technologies such as telephones, automobiles, and computers. Now, there is a small problem with population growth. Population growth can go through and outgrow the available food supply until starvation, war, and disease can go through and arise. And this is something that Malthus proposed in his ideas of the Essay on the Principles of Population. Now, biologists have talked about and warned how population growth will have disastrous effects on human welfare. Paul Ehrlich predicted that rapidly increasing human population could unleash famine and conflict that could consume civilization. However, these forecasts have not materialized on the scale that Ehrlich predicted. And some economists like Julius Simon think that this dire prediction is unlikely and that technology can stretch out our resources. However, we still have to be concerned, and scientists still warn about how global population crisis can be possible. Now, population growth does have an effect on the ecological footprint, and this is the environmental effect that an individual population, in terms of the total amount of land and water required, has on that environment. So it's important for us to go through and keep this in mind when we get to our next video in our next section here, because an ecological footprint is affected by the growth and the size that a population has. All right, so this is going to be the end of the video. Did you guys learn? Well, did you learn a couple of things? Did you guys go through and learn about what human population growth is? Did you guys go through and learn about the revolutions leading to an increase in human population growth? And then did you guys go through and were you introduced to the idea of the ecological footprint? This is going to be the end of the video. I will see you all in class tomorrow.